Yes.
Awesome. I don't know why I'd never tell you. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Dynasty Dudes Hangout. We're joined by our special guest, Ryan McDowell, this evening. How's it going tonight, fellas?
Good. How are you guys?
Pretty awesome. Nathan, I'm thinking we should just make that part of our intro where you ask me if we're live. Because, I mean, at this point, it's not really, it's just every week. So we might as well just make it part of the show and just accept it.
It's not a bad idea.
It's tradition.
Yeah. Other than that, though, things are good.
All right, so we'll get into the news and notes of the week. Obviously, the biggest news to come out this week was the LaShawn McCoy for Kiko Alonso trade between the Bills and the Eagles. Any thoughts on that trade, fellas?
Little known fact, for about 2 years, I called Kiko Alonso Kiki Alonso, and then my friend one day was like, Russ, it's Kiko. And I was like, oh. Other than that, I don't like this for LaShawn McCoy at all. I don't like his age. I don't like the amount of carries he's had. It just smells like bad news for his dynasty value. But I mean, I know Ryan probably thinks the same because he just hates all running backs. But yeah, I'm pretty much out on LaShawn McCoy at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think his value was trending down already. You know, we saw that from ADP, and I don't know if you guys have any dynasty shares, but you know, he's not. You can't get top 20 value for him in a trade in a current league. So, you know, going to the Bills, they're run heavy, obviously with Ryan there, but you know, it's also been pointed out how little Greg Roman uses his running backs in the passing game, which has been a huge part of McCoy's PPR value in dynasty leagues and in any league. So, yeah, he's 26 or 27. He's you know, new team, new system. I'm pretty much out on him too.
So take him out for the woodshed is what you're saying.
I'll trade for him in a couple of years when he's much cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I think he's done. I could just see like a lot of different ranges where things could end really badly for him, and I don't know.
No, I don't think he's done either. But you know, this time a year ago, or even 6 months ago, he was still considered the number one running back, and you know, now he's probably 3 at best. And I think you know, Jeremy Hill is just getting closer and closer to him in ADP every month. So it would not surprise me with this trade if Hill bypasses him in April mocks.
What do you think, Nathan?
Yeah, my take on McCoy, I don't really see the trade really changing his value really at all, mostly because he was trending down. This happens like 2 years ago or whatever, as Chip Kelly was coming into the team, and people started pumping him up because of the Chip Kelly offense. It'd be a little different, but his value was trending down, and I really don't think it's much worse. And I think that he'll be vultured less by the RB2, where he was vultured by Sproles a lot last year with a lot of targets and carries and whatnot.
And I guess we can do Couldn't Care Less Island pretty early this week, so let's just do it now.
Okay.
This week on Couldn't Care Less Island, we're nominating Chris Polk because he didn't get drafted, correct? Chris Polk? I don't believe he got drafted. He hasn't done anything his first few years in the league, and I just see sort of he's not worth a lot right now, but I would not be investing, and I won't be investing in him. I just don't see any way that he's the running back there or I don't even really see him being the backup there in 2015. So I don't know. That's where I'm at with him. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Ryan.
I agree. I mean, I think Sproles is going to pretty much keep his same role as the pass catching back there. He'll have some value. It's just tough to start him. And you know, they're going to add somebody. There's already been rumors of who they're interested in, whether it's rookies in the draft or free agents. they're not gonna ride Chris Polk. And yeah, I agree with Russ. Maybe he may not even be the number 2. So um, the hot take after that trade was, hey, go trade Chris Polk for for something of value, and that's just easier said.
Right.
I mean, I've seen one trade with him since the McCoy trade, and it was Polk and 2.09 for the 2.06, which I think that's probably I'd still take the 2.06.
Yeah, that's not bad. I'm just basically saying don't invest any type of capital in him.
Yeah, if he was on a waiver wire somewhere, maybe rush to the waiver wire and do that for the heck of it. But no, you're not investing anything in Chris Polk right now. He's not going to there's zero chance that they don't either pick up another running back in free agency or draft a running back.
Yeah, even if you're in a 24-man roster league, you 24 man rosters, probably I'll take a look at him on the waiver wire, but I'm probably still not even that interested.
All right.
I think the whole running back market is just going to be destroyed with so many potential rookie running backs coming in, and then a pretty heavy free agent market. There's just going to be some situations that are destroyed as soon as this time next week.
Yeah, it's really going to be amazing when we look back post-draft and sort of some of the guys that, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, when right before free agency and the draft, there was this period where, Michael LaShore, Ryan, you probably remember this, he was going in, the 5th round of, mocks and stuff. And I was, we're not going to get into how I felt about the whole situation, but I mean, there's just situations like that where guys are sort of valued because there's perceived touches there for next year, and it's probably just not the case for some of these guys.
Just avoid all running backs. That's the best advice.
I'm slowly coming over to that philosophy, but I might need another year of failure.
That's sure to happen. So
with free agency, a lot of rumor mills are swirling. So we'll talk about a few of the rumors for the news and notes. DeAndre Hopkins is now he's been for the last 18 months the number 1 for the Texans, and he was essentially told that by the Texans. They were he was like, "What? I'm not the number 1," and apparently he wants out of Houston because he thinks he could be a number 1. So pretty much getting out of a Ryan Fitzpatrick situation would be a good thing, especially if you can get to the Patriots, which is rumored for every single wide receiver ever.
Yeah.
But any possible landing spots that you'd like for Andre Johnson outside of New England or including New England?
Oh boy, you take this one first, Ryan.
I've heard the Baltimore connection. They obviously need some wide receiver help, and they're always active in free agency. Typically, that wouldn't be a landing spot I would love, but with Trestman there, it's pretty exciting. And Johnson has trended down as he's gotten a little bit older, but also his quarterbacks, as you mentioned, have been terrible. So it's hard to know what's to blame there. And I think he still has some value, and he can definitely help a win now dynasty team.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And it's so tough with Andre Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald. Who really knows exactly how much their skills have diminished just because of the quarterback play, So I was really in on Andre leaving last year, but obviously he didn't. So if he does leave this year, I wouldn't be afraid to buy just for the chance. He's got sort of a Steve Smith 1 year old guy comeback, but I don't know. I'm waiting and seeing with him.
Well, he's pretty cheap, at least in startup drafts. I mean, he's 12th, 13th, 14th round, so there's almost no risk there.
Right.
Yeah, so it feels like we've gone back and forth with the Randall Cobb thing about a million times. Between him for sure staying, for sure going, back and forth, back and forth. Well, now it's starting to look like he's gone. They didn't put the franchise tag on him, and people are starting to think, okay, they're going to go forward with Adams and Janis and Aberderis. And one of the teams rumored for him to go would be the Oakland Raiders, and Roto World blurb, they're going to break the bank on Cobb. What would that mean for Randall Cobb's outlook on the Raiders or any other team essentially?
From my perspective, I actually feel like Cobb could sort of sustain his own value, even without Aaron Rodgers. That's sort of my view of him as a player right now. I'm maybe not as high as some on Derek Carr, but I do think he has the potential to sort of I think Cobb could be a legitimate wide receiver too, bordering in that 12 to 16 range with in Oakland. I mean, maybe that's crazy of me, but I could see that if he goes there. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, that's pretty much where I am as well. And I'm a huge Cobb fan. I'm a Kentucky fan, and he's pretty much all we have. But he was, Kentucky football has been bad forever, it feels like. And he was great at Kentucky, and he dominated the SEC. And, so he's used to playing on bad teams. Obviously not in the NFL. And any team he goes to other than the Packers is pretty much going to be a downgrade at quarterback. But I don't think he goes from a borderline wide receiver one to useless. Some people just act like he's a must sell if he goes anywhere other than Green Bay, and that's just not how I see it.
See, that's the problem. Is people have been asking me like the last month or two, sell Cobb before he hits free agency and before he leaves Green Bay. I'm like, no, because everyone thinks he's leaving Green Bay, which means his trade value is down to begin with. If anything, he's a buy right now.
Yeah, right. and he plays that slot role where it's like he's going to get targeted. It's not like he's going to get ignored, like he's a big, deep receiver that's going to a bad situation where the targets are always going to be off. Like he's going to get dump-offs. They're going to use him in the run game a little bit at least, and he's going to be worked sort of the short near the line of scrimmage. So I think he can sustain his own value, but obviously that remains to be seen.
And I'm still not convinced he's leaving Green Bay.
Yeah.
I think there's, and again, maybe this is the homer in me, but I think there's some, a sense of loyalty there. So if he can get close contract-wise, then I think he'll stay. I think they'll try to keep him.
Yeah, it'll be to see how it plays out. If anything, he's a buy. He's not a sell right now. And then once we get to free agency, if there's I'm not comparing the two as players, but when Eric Decker signed with the Jets last year, there was a mass panic, and people were selling him for second-round rookie picks, and that was just money.
Yeah.
All right. One of the other rumors, right after the McCoy trade, there's a lot of decent free agent rookie running backs. There's, not rookie, a lot of free agent running backs.
I'll be right back.
Mark Ingram, Mitch Marino, Stephen Ridley, not world-breaking talents or whatever, but definitely solid guys in an offense and could benefit greatly from the Chip Kelly offense. So Mark Ingram has been rumored there. And then the other thing was James Winston and I, we were out partying the other night. No, not really. But he did spend the week in Tampa. And according to Schefter, it's not normal for teams to be rookies on their visits this early. So I think it's definitely a positive sign that the Bucs will be going to number one. And pretty much that's what we're going to be hearing for the next 2-3 months or whenever the draft is. But yeah, why don't we do the things that make you say what, and then we'll get into our sponsor, and then we'll get into our topics with Ryan.
Things that make you say what?
What is saying us what?
I'd say Cole Beasley getting a contract extension is pretty mind-blowing to me. I don't know about you guys, but when I saw that, I was like, what? Excuse me? I just don't understand how they could be spending money on, Not that I mean I think Cole Beasley's a fine slot player, but doesn't it seem like they should be spending whatever money they have on Dez and maybe even DeMarco Murray right now?
Yeah, but I'm not really sure how much, the 4 year, 16 million. Yeah, I'm not even maybe that much. I don't even remember what it was. But I don't think his contract's going to be killing any contracts. Is what I'm thinking.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. It just surprised me with all this Dez stuff going on, and then they sign this sort of mediocre to below average receiver. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's where we're headed with all this, huh?
It's because of the video that still exists.
Yeah, so it's getting less and less likely, and that's just a weird situation that I don't know.
All right. Any thoughts on Cole Beasley, Ryan?
No, none.
Okay,
Exactly.
now, a word from our sponsor. Reality Sports Online is a powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. RSO features a revolutionary free agency auction room, which mimics NFL free agency, enabling fantasy owners to compete against each other to negotiate with and sign NFL's top talent to single or multi-year contracts. An intuitive algorithm acts as a player's agent, automatically valuing offers using the same factors used in real life: the total amount, per year average salary, total guarantee, and contract length. In addition to its revolutionary free agency software, RSO's League Manager has tons of other cool features like in-season signs and cuts, multi-team up to 5, and future draft pick trades, franchise tag, injured reserve, automated contract, and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Test your general manager skills today by participating in a free mock free agency auction at realitysportsonline.com and use the code DUDES10 to get a 10% off league entry fees. Once again, that's DUDES10 to get 10% off league entry fees. All right, so we're going to get into what we're talking about with Ryan today. Ryan is known throughout the community as two things: Mr. ADP and the crazy commish with all his ideas. So we'll start off with the commish thing. Ryan,
I have a first question.
Oh, go.
How many leagues do you commish, and how are you still a sane person?
Let's see. I commish probably a dozen leagues, something like that.
Woo!
Yeah, around that.
Oh, goodness.
That's impressive.
The sanity, I have no idea, and that's questionable. So.
Yeah, no, I just it's just a lot to sort of manage year to year, and either filling spots or collecting fees, which isn't always an enjoyable process.
Dealing with bylaws.
Yeah, dealing with the bylaws and all that fun stuff. So, for all you people that don't commish leagues out there, give some respect up to your commissions.
Okay, so we'll start off with my first opening question that Russell hijacked.
Yeah, I had to.
How did you get into commissioning? When did you start, and how did it come about, essentially?
It was about 10 years ago, probably about this time of year. And I used to be pretty active, as Russell knows, on the Football Guys Forum. So at this time, Dynasty was not a huge deal, and even the Dynasty leagues that were around, kind of took a break in the off season. So there was basically a message board conversation with a bunch of guys over at Football Guys saying, all just complaining about how dead their leagues were this time of year and how that frustrated them, and they wanted a year-round active league. So pretty much a league formed through that conversation, and somebody needed to step up as a commish, and I had never commished a league at all. I'd only played at that point in one Dynasty league, and I just said I would do that, and that became Hyperactive One, and they're hyperactive leagues are 24-team leagues, and there's now 5 of those with tons of riders and some of the most active Dynasty owners, in the country, really. So I did 5 hyperactive leagues, and then just in the past 2 or 3 years, I've started with some of the other more unique formats that have come to mind.
Okay, that's really cool. So, just talk about you mentioned the crazy leagues. Is there one certain format or concept in your leagues that you think that it would be great for all leagues to have or most leagues to have, something like that?
Gosh, there's so many. I've really gotten into auction leagues in the past few years, and I would, strongly recommend or strongly prefer auction leagues to your normal traditional drafts. They're just they're just so much fun. You can different ways to build a team, and you can always get your guy, whoever your guy is, if you're willing to pay enough. And that's not true necessarily in a startup draft. So if I had to say one thing, I would say auctions. But I love Devy leagues where you can draft college players before they get to the NFL. And then there's a lot of smaller rules and settings that I think make any dynasty league more enjoyable.
With the auctions, I'd say they're definitely more accurate because you can you either get the guys you like or you don't, and then if you're wrong about those guys, your team isn't very good. So I'd say it's definitely a better it's more of an accurate description of. I think the cream rises to the top more often than not with auctions rather than startups. Regular ones, but it's tough to get people to sort of transition from what they're comfortable with. And even though I'm totally aware of the way auctions work and I like them, it's just tough for me to get away still from the basic startup, which I still love and enjoy.
Oh yeah, startup drafts are a blast. I didn't mean to knock them.
No, I know. I'm just saying I think in a perfect world we would do auctions instead of startups. It's just so hard to transition away from it,
Yeah, I was really intimidated by trying an auction before I did, and I guess this was kind of the first unique league rule or league setting I had. I wanted to try an auction startup, but I also wanted a league where there was an annual rookie auction as well. So every auction league, dynasty auction league I could find, began with a startup auction and then went to a rookie draft each year, which really just made no sense to me. So when I couldn't find what I was looking for, I just started a new league. I set up a format where each draft pick correlated with a dollar amount, which, from what I can tell, is pretty widely used in a bunch of different auction leagues now, including some of the newer ones that we each play in. So that was really just kind of on a whim, and the guys that were in that first league helped me put that chart together where the picks equal dollar amounts, and it's worked pretty well.
Yeah, the one thing I like about the rookie auctions is that once the picks are settled and you have your dollar amounts and you know how much you have for your rookie auction, I feel like rookie auction dollars become a little more tradable.
Yeah, that's really fun to trade the dollar amounts instead of just the pick. It's more fluid almost,
Yeah, and also for example, when you trade for 90 rookie auction dollars, which in most leagues that's a late first, early second, essentially. That doesn't mean you're going to get a player in the late first or early second value. That could mean you're getting a player that's the 101 instead of the 104.
Yeah, exactly. And again, when I was putting this together, that was a huge thing, that kind of a fork in the road that I came to. Do we once these dollar amounts are assigned and every owner knows how much money they have, what do you do with that? Do you have to? Does this player, does Todd Gurley have to go for the most money, or how's this going to work? And the idea of I call it stacking the picks or stacking the money, just made the most sense. So, if I have 10 third-round rookie picks, that may equate to, Todd Gurley somehow.
Right. It's another layer of strategy that I think is pretty cool.
All right, so we'll talk about we might come back and forth between the two topics here, but ADP. A lot of people struggle kind of how to exactly use it. It's like some people say, "Oh, I can't draft this player in the fourth because he has fifth round ADP," type of thing. How do you specifically use the ADP form to DLF?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to use it. Obviously it can be used as a draft tool. Some people like to use that as a trade chart, or just to evaluate the current state of their team. And I think you can do that as long as you are using it liberally. You can't just go to another owner and say, "Hey, your guy has a lower ADP. Let's make that deal." That's not going to work.
Yeah.
I've also, this time of year, now that rookies are included in our mock drafts, I see a lot of people saying, this guy's being drafted before Todd Gurley, so he's worth more than the 1-1. And that's not going to work either. In some cases it will, but I actually mentioned that in the DLF newsletter earlier this week. There's guys like Kelvin Benjamin and T.Y. Hilton who were being drafted ahead of Gurley in last month's mock drafts, and I think you'd probably get laughed at if you offered either one of those guys for the 1-1. So you can't use it as a trade chart. I don't think you can use it as some kind of correlation between veteran value and rookie pick value. I think that the best way to use it is simply as a draft tool, which is really what it's intended for. And then at the same time, I don't think you should necessarily stick to it as some type of guarantee. Just because a player like you mentioned, has a fifth round ADP, it does not mean that he won't be drafted before that. I've actually had some people show up in my mentions on Twitter angry that so-and-so got higher than their ADP, and the best advice I can say is, go get your guy and don't wait on him.
Absolutely.
If you need, go ahead. If you need to reach a little bit, then do that. But we can never, nobody can ever predict how one single draft will play out, and I think our ADP is just a tool that can help us assess current value.
Right, and I mean, one league of 12 people, who knows how everyone has sort of at least a slightly different strategy, and you just don't know who you're getting in each league. So you could get 7 people who all want to draft young in one league, or even more, and so that might shift the ADP in one direction. Then you might have more people who want to win now, so that might shift it in another direction. So I think ADP gives you a good range and maybe a good place to start sort of trade negotiations, but definitely not where they end. Like Ryan said, you can't just go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, this guy was drafted lower, so you should trade him to me now." Which I have seen, and it has happened to me before, so it's not that crazy.
Yeah, no, the trade comment was funny to me because this week in one of my leagues, it wasn't not even like a Twitter league, just one I found like on a forum, and the trade in the comments said, "This website ranks this guy higher, so you should make this trade." And I was like, "What?" I have my own rankings at DLF, and they say differently.
I've had it hasn't happened lately, but last year, I guess, I had people to quote the DLF ADP to me and send me a link to it. So I guess they didn't realize that. I guess they didn't realize that that was
funny.
me putting those together, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think I saw the ADP this month, guys. I think I saw
Yeah, once or twice.
it.
You got anything? Anything to go from here?
Oh, you were waiting on me?
I guess.
Okay, so
You guys can you can both explain your strategy for Kitchen Sink 3 coming up.
Oh, I'm going
Oh.
all running backs, everything that you hate. Just gonna go for all of those things.
Okay. All right. I'll hold you to that.
I don't even
I
have
guess
a conference though, so you know.
I guess I'll pretty much roll with it and see how it kind of works out. So how I normally do things. I mean, I've definitely started to lean towards younger players, at least middle valued players. Like I found the last few years, those middle aged wide receivers just do not usually bring good returns. And I've sort of looked into this for a few years now, and like Ryan says, if you want to buy them back sort of when they're a little older and they don't cost such a premium, I think that's a good move. But like for instance, Vincent Jackson in the 6th round was one of my picks last year, and it just
Not good.
no, there are guys like that again this year, and I'm definitely shying away from those types of guys. I mean, he's actually not that bad anymore because his value has sort of dropped quite a bit. But those are the types, the 28, 29-year-old sort of, you know.
I was actually thinking today about just my prototypical, or I guess my ideal dynasty team. What would that look like? And again, this may sound easier said than done, but I want a top 5 quarterback, a top 5 tight end, young wide receivers, and old running backs. And I think I'm happy with that. And old meaning, Arian Foster, Marshawn Lynch. Those, this time of year, those guys can be had pretty relatively cheaply. I think Russell, you traded me Marshawn Lynch.
Yes, I did. I was just thinking about that
in the DLF Staff League last year. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. Always in a giving mood.
And that doesn't mean I wouldn't want Le'Veon Bell or some of those guys, but you can't have all young studs at every position. So, give me the young, high upside guys at wide receiver, and I'll take my chance on the older guys at running back.
Yeah, an article that you wrote last year was the punting in year one article, and I think it kind of lends itself to that theory. You kind of want to talk about the whole concept of punting year one?
Sure. Basically, my strategy and actually this has changed a little bit as I've gotten more into auctions. That article pertains more to startup drafts. But my startup draft strategy is pretty much to load up on youth everywhere, but especially at wide receiver. And then, I grab a quarterback and a tight end who I feel have some kind of balance of being a safe pick with some high upside as well. This year's example might be somebody like ASJ. A combo of like Tannehill and ASJ or Teddy Bridgewater and ASJ would be the type of players I would be targeting this year. And then all the rest of my picks in the first 8, 10, 12 rounds would be young wide receivers. And I pretty much don't worry about the running back position at all. Most of my leagues are start one running back leagues. So in year one, I really don't care what running backs I have. Stay active on the waiver wire. If I can grab a guy like C.J. Anderson, obviously do that. There's there's not guys like that every year. I don't want to overstate how or understate, I guess, how good of a season he had. But you can get starting running backs on the waiver wire, at least one or two each year. And then basically I don't mind to lose and take my lumps in year one, and hopefully that leads to a high rookie pick.
Productive struggle.
What's that? Productive struggle. Yes, that's right. I heard that term, and we had a teacher training professional development meeting like the day after the school year ended last year, and that is not the best time to do any kind of training. We were all just ready to be out of there, and we were zoning out and playing on our phones and not being good students. And the presenter says this term productive struggle, which I'd actually, if I'd heard it before, I didn't remember. But as soon as she said that, I jotted that down because I knew that is the exact, that was a great term for how I treat year one of a dynasty. So I'm actually working on an article kind of explaining this, but I used the productive struggle in the DLF Staff League that started up 2 years ago. I was the second to worst team. Eric Dickens ended up as the last place team. He took just shout out to Eric there. So with the 1-1, he took Sammy Watkins. I took Mike Evans, and
rubbing it in again. You're throwing him all kinds of shade.
So, well, I'd still be glad to have Sammy. So then the next part, productive struggle. It's easy to lose. It's easy to draft a lot of young guys, but the next step is the important part. So I had some young wide receivers. I had Cam Newton at quarterback, and I had Jordan Cameron at tight end. So I had my bases at those positions, but I had no running backs. I think my number one running back was Andre Ellington, which is not something I was comfortable with. So I proceeded just to make as many trades as I could for targeting veteran running backs. And just last offseason in that league, I acquired Reggie Bush, Joique Bell, Arian Foster, and Lynch, and ended up winning the title in year two. So basically went from almost last place to the champion using that strategy. And it's not cookie cutter. It's not something everybody can do. You don't always get guys like Mike Evans at the 1.02 pick, and some of those moves just worked out, and other moves I've made in other leagues have not. So but that's kind of best case for that strategy I use.
Yeah, I definitely have. I haven't done that before, but I think there's a lot of upside that maybe a lot of other strategies don't have, because if you sort of tank year one, that sort of top 3 pick you get next year is going to be worth a lot automatically. You know what I mean? So you're automatically just gaining a piece that most other teams won't have, just right off the bat. So and I think Ryan was the one tweeting about it, how like going from rookie to second year, like players just sort of automatically gain ground in ADP, right? That was you tweeting about that?
Yes, yeah, and that's actually an article series that the first one has been released already. That was rookie investments, and there's other parts of that series that I'm working on. But yeah, I think rookies in general, in from year one to year two, are safe investments, and that doesn't guarantee production. It certainly doesn't guarantee production in year 2 or 3, but basically from the off season before they begin their career until the off season after year 1, they're pretty much going to maintain value. I mean, even guys like Bishop Sankey and who had a rough first year. His ADP is almost exactly what it was this time last year. Cody Latimer did nothing. I think he had 1 or 2 catches all year, and his ADP has shot way up just with the wide receiver craze. So, rookies I think are fairly safe.
Yeah, the Latimer rise was pretty obvious from day one. It was like he was going, second round of rookie drafts, and then in startups, 8th, 9th round. It's like, okay, he's not going to do anything year one, and then Julius Thomas will leave, and then his ADP will shoot up. And that's what's happening.
So I think even if you go win now, you almost have to take that into account and sort of grab some young guys here and there at least, because as much as like we talk about the value not meaning everything to sort of winning, you do have to have some capital if you want to make some trades eventually. And I just think that's an easy way, going young in those middle rounds, like 6th to 12th round. Like there's a lot of guys that emerge every year from around that range. So
so 2 points there. One, you cannot compete every year. In a good, strong dynasty league, you're not going to win a title every year. You're not even going to make the playoffs every year. So with productive struggle, I feel like I'm choosing when I'm not going to make the playoffs. I go in saying I'm going to give up year one. I'm not making the playoffs in year one. And depending on how it goes, I may not make the playoffs in year two. But I know I have young players as a base versus the the win now strategy. And if you're going extreme win now with veterans and you're taking McCoy in the second round and you're taking Calvin in the first round and you're going with all those I don't want to say older players, but that compared to their peers, they are older. You may win in year one, and then a couple of years down the road, now those are the years you're not making the playoffs, but you also don't have that full startup draft to reload on youth. You have one draft at a time to get 3 or 4 rookies, depending on how your draft works and how many picks you have. And it's going to take you a lot longer to build that young base that I built in the startup draft.
And I actually, something similar to not total win now, but in a startup I did last year, this guy drafted Charles, Lacey, McCoy, and one other first or second round guy. And the way we sort of looked at it then was like, wow, okay, he's going to be really good in year one. But the bigger point I'm making here is Charles got hurt, McCoy had a down year, and it's like this. The way even we perceive these win now players now might be completely different than we do in 6 months, Like, and once they start on the downhill, like, when they start losing their value, it's a steep drop, and now you're looking at that guy in year two, doesn't have a first or a second, and I don't know. It's just it can put you in a potentially really tough spot.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sorry, Nathan.
Okay, I'll go. Especially in the first 10 to 12 rounds, I'm asking myself, where is this guy in 12 months? When you're taking Calvin and McCoy, neither of those guys are going to be top 15 picks in 12 months. It doesn't even matter if they have record-breaking years.
I actually do think Calvin could stick around.
But he's still going to
You don't think so?
No. I mean, he's almost out of the first round now.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, I think, look at who's behind him. Jeffrey is a lock to go ahead of him next year.
That's true.
I mean, even guys like Cooper and, Kevin White could go ahead of him next year.
Right, and it wouldn't even take that much from them to sort of get the hype train rolling. So
yeah, I agree with Nathan as far as thinking 12 months down the road. And then the other thing, this is more of a question I ask myself once you get to the mid rounds. What would it take for this player? What would it take for me to be able to flip this player for a first round pick? So once you get to round 8, 9, 10, maybe even earlier than that, most of those guys you would not be able to trade in an established league for a first-round rookie pick. But I asked myself, if I'm debating between two players, what's the scenario that he becomes worthy of a first-round pick? Maybe, if I'm looking at Nile Davis, for example, what has to happen? Jamal Charles has to get hurt, and Davis has to play well. Both of those things seem pretty reasonable. So if I'm debating, if I'm choosing between Nile Davis and
Andre Johnson.
Andre Johnson, I don't know.
I don't even. You should have let you answer that.
That's interesting because the ADP on those guys is probably not close. I'm assuming Andre Johnson is still going ahead of Nile Davis. I don't know off the top of my head. But what has to happen for Andre Johnson to be worth a first-round rookie pick?
A lot.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, basically, it's impossible. Yeah. So
yeah, maybe that makes, depending on what kind of team you're building, maybe that makes Nile Davis the pick there. That's just another kind of conversation I have with myself in the middle and late rounds.
What does your family think about you talking to yourself?
They're used to that.
Nathan, I rudely interrupted you. You can continue now.
Continue what?
You're talking about Calvin and
McCoy. I think we've past that one, Russell. So.
You what?
I think we've moved past that one. I think we.
We don't have to. We want to hear your thoughts.
I already forgot the rest of my thoughts.
All right.
Been here very long. All right. Anything else you got?
I think we're good.
Okay. Ryan, you've talked about your experience in Dynasty Leagues a lot so far. What have you noticed about? I mean, obviously there's big changes as far as like the valuation of positions, but specifically between like trades, free agency, what have you noticed in Dynasty strategy over the years changing?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, I think the obvious is the devaluation of the running back position. When I first started playing Dynasty, I played in those. Russell, I don't know if you ever did those Misfits and Outlaws leagues.
Yeah.
And I remember a buddy of mine. We would talk Dynasty strategy and startup strategy all the time, and we almost had it down of not necessarily names, but exactly what position we would take every round. And we always would start our draft with 4 straight running backs before we considered a wide receiver or a quarterback. And that would just be crazy now. So and that it feels like wide receiver has been king forever, but I don't know if you saw this. I tweeted out the 2012 ADP earlier today, and Calvin Johnson was pretty high up there, and AJ Green, but it was filled with running backs still. There were just a ton of running backs, and right now I tweeted the top 24, I believe, and there were probably at least half of those guys, maybe more, were running backs, and right now I think there are 2 running backs in the top 24. I think it's Bell and Lacey only, maybe McCoy.
That sounds about right, yeah.
But it has changed so much just in that aspect. And then as far as team building strategy that has changed over the years, definitely just people favoring youth over established veterans, and being willing to take their lumps and take their losses, like we talked about earlier, hoping to strike gold with these young players.
This has never happened before, Ryan. I swear. If you watch any other podcasts,
I'm just glad Russell doesn't have face paint this time.
Aren't we all? I think we're all thankful.
I couldn't get through that episode.
Well,
hey, that's fine.
You aren't posting dog pictures on Twitter, so that's why. That's why you're not on the dog one. But any specific thoughts we got on free agency that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't have anything specific. I'm just excited to see, see how it plays out. I think there'll be tons of running backs and wide receivers changing teams. I think there's still some wide receivers that will be cut that haven't been yet. We talked about Andre Johnson already, and I think guys like Colston and Dwayne Bowe will probably be cut. So it's always interesting, if those guys land with the Patriots, like you said, or if Cobb ends up leaving, maybe the Packers grab one of those guys. So I think there's a chance for some bounce back seasons with those older wide receivers.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and you've definitely talked about the whole with Jordy Nelson. Like, don't buy him today. Buy him in 2 years when everyone will be panicking about his contract will be up, and he'll be like 32 years old or whatever, and he'll be like a double-digit startup round pick. But yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, so I started the Dynasty Blueprint series last year at DLF, which is probably my favorite thing I've ever written. Productive Struggle was part of that, and then there were a couple of other articles in that series, and I'm going to continue that this off season, just as far as some general dynasty and team building strategies. And the one I'm working on right now is basically about selling players at the end of their prime, and then buying them a couple years later. So, it was 2 or 3 years ago that was the time to sell Andre Johnson, and now is the time to buy him. And like you said, give me 2 more years and then I'll buy Jordy.
Yeah, I think one of the main things we have to take out of this is sort of like you're constantly building a philosophy in Dynasty. It's not just one sort of concept. Like, you learn through playing in leagues and sort of interacting with people and sort of seeing all the different strategies and all these startups. And I mean, if I tend to go back years later and look at old startups I did and look at strategies that worked and didn't, and I just you're always sort of building. It's not like and the landscape's always changing as well. So there's definitely a lot to learn, and it's a never-ending process. So if you're just starting out, as I was talking with someone the other day, like, don't be insecure that you don't know it all if you're playing in your first Dynasty League, because you're not going to, Like, those first few years are pretty much learn as you go. And then you sort of figure out what type of strategy you want to play in or what type of league you like. But it's all a process.
Yeah,
right, Nathan?
I think that obviously it's probably not optimal. While we all love joining leagues, but if you're in your first or second year, joining like 10 leagues at once might not be the best strategy in the world. But yeah, that's essentially my take on the new players thing. Ryan, if there was one, I know that this is a very loaded question, but if there's one bit of advice for new coming Dynasty owners, what would it be for you?
I would say, I don't know if I can pick just one. I would say no player value. Become familiar with player value as much as you can, whether that's through ADP or through following, some of the dynasty trades that are being made, or just keeping up with, ongoing drafts, or just however you do that. But no player value, and then also, of course, it goes without saying, but know your league rules, and settings and scoring and things like that.
Yeah, those are very important. So we'll wrap up the show. It's about that time. Ryan, why don't you first of all, thank you a lot for coming on tonight. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully our listeners learned a lot about ADP and commissioning and your experiences. So where can they find you on the Twitter, and where else in the world can they find you?
Sure. My Twitter is RyanMC23, and then you can find my work at dynastyleaguefootball.com.
All right, Russell, you want to sign off?
Yeah, you can find me at FF Russell Clay, pretty much on there weirdly every day. Nobody knows how. And yeah, I'll be putting out quite a few stuff for college football, so if you're interested in that, check it out.
And I am Nathan Powell at MPowellFF on the Twitter. I'm at DLF, and I'm your official middle school scout, so be sure to check me out on the weekends. That's what I do.
All right, we will see you later, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.